this is not only a transit linkage for our neighborhood to transit, but also to our park system. I think this is an important, this is going to be an important decision for the Twin Cities area for many years to come. It will provide an important link to jobs in the Southwest area, which are not accessible except by car. And I think it'll be of great benefit to our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no one else signed in. Does anyone wish to come forward and speak? State your name and address for the record. That's you.
Hi, my name is Sally Roos. I live in Bryn Mawr at 620 Oliver Avenue South. I just have to say I disagree. Bryn Mawr is not completely in support of this alignment. I want to say that voting yes means putting wealthy, privileged, primarily white, sports-loving suburban people first, and shelving residents who need, want, and deserve equitable mass transit system. A vote yes means endangering lives, including my life and my children's lives. We're in the blast zone. We live right there. And also first responders who, as I speak, are saying that they feel hopeless. They say that they don't know how they're going to get to the site, the construction site, or any place where there's co-location. I'm sure you feel hopeless too. I'm guessing that you feel pressure from Hennepin County and developers and the legislature, the state government, and maybe from each other as well, your fellow council members. But I'm here to apply voter pressure and tell you that we feel very personal about this. And we voted for you. And we really are counting on you to vote no.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to come forward who hasn't spoken yet? Come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Good morning. I'm LaShella Sims, 915 Upton Avenue North. I'm an organizer with Micah, and I serve on various committees with the regarding the transit systems. And I'd just like to say that as you consider the various aspects, to know that the freight safety is really a big thing. I have a brother who worked 32 years with Union Carbide in Charleston, West Virginia, and at one time they were considered the, I guess, the chemical capital of the United States. But in talking with him, and he served, part of his job was also in freight safety in regards to what we're talking about in terms of the freight trains process across the country. And in talking with him about this issue, I learned a lot, plus researching on the computer. But one of the things that, a few basic things he said that citizens should know about, and at this point, I don't even know if we can get this information, is number one, is that someone knows at all times where these freight trains are and what they're carrying. And that each car should be labeled all around with a placard describing with a symbol what they contain. That none of the freight should be parked within the city limits. I've seen freight cars, the cars out here parked across on the rail that goes across River Road. A lot of times, West River Road. They're only supposed to travel certain times of the day. I don't, who knows if they're abiding by these basic things. And I was at a meeting with the last couple of weeks that Al Franken and I think the young lady, Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin, had regarding the freight safety. And then listening to and talking to one of the first responders, he said that at this time that they really aren't able to communicate with each other like the problem was at the World Trade Center. And
Thank you. We really do need you to wrap up.
okay, and even Senator Franklin was surprised at that and said he would look into that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone wish to come forward who had not signed in? Anyone wish to come forward? Seeing none, I will.
Maria Mead, 2601 Sunset Boulevard. One of the big arguments in the newspaper was that this was an affluent white neighborhood and they didn't want the light rail in their backyard. I am certainly not affluent. I live in a one-bedroom apartment right by where the light rail is going to go. And one of the hypocrisies of that argument is that in this country, we encourage success and we encourage education and everybody getting an education so they can make money and be successful. But when it comes to something like this, we vilify those white people for being successful. That neighborhood is beautiful and our lakes are beautiful. And I agree, we need to get the north side integrated more into our population, but there are other routes we can do without compromising that. The people that live there take care of their properties. It's a beautiful neighborhood. And I, as a chauffeur, drive people around there and they marvel at the beauty of that area. And I do believe that this light rail is designed to get those people out of there by eminent domain and turn this into an area where other people outside of the city are going to get rich. I think they want to make it into a place where more people will be populated, turn the lakes into a resort-like area or a, high-end shopping and all that. And the north side, none of those people are going to benefit from that. I don't believe that, but I think that light rail is paving the way for other ideas people have for that neighborhood. And I ask you to vote no. This is our city and this is Minneapolis. I love my city and I love the lakes and I love the loons every morning I hear in the spring on Cedar Lake. And they won't come there anymore. They won't if we build this. And thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to come forward and speak? Anyone wish to come forward and speak? Seeing I will now close the public hearing. Any questions from council members? Any follow-up? Seeing none, I will move the main item before us, and then following that, we will entertain a resolution that addresses many of the issues that have been raised and were articulated very succinctly by Representative Hornstein. But for the first thing that's before us, which is the resolution approving preliminary design plans for the Southwest LRT project submitted to the city by the Metropolitan Council on July 23rd, 2015, in order to fulfill the requirements of Minnesota Statute Section 473-3994, Subdivision 3. I move that and have Councilmember Bender in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate everyone who's taken the time over many years here to come to, I don't know how many public meetings and hearings and about this. Many of you are from one part of town, but you've voiced things that I've heard over and over from my own constituents in the neighborhoods near the lakes. My two children play in Lake Calhoun along with children from many neighborhoods nearby. Just one of the many ways that our community relies on the lakes for, our quality of life, and is a huge benefit to people who live not just immediately adjacent to the lakes, but in all of the neighborhoods nearby. This is the second time I will have voted yes for municipal consent of Southwest Light Rail. The first time I did so with very strongly worded staff direction related to lake quality. I don't think any of us are, we're really relying on our professional staff, on our engineers at the Met Council, at the city, who have assured us that the plans in place for managing water during construction and after construction are adequate to protect the quality of lakes, and we have to rely on those professional staff. So that is what I am doing. I remain concerned about the quality of our lakes. I'm voting yes because this is an important project for our region and my constituents. Many of them rely on transit, and we need to build out our regional transit system. I understand the remaining frustration of my constituents who want to see better transit through the densely populated Uptown and Whittier neighborhoods. We still do not have commitment to build those lines that would run through my ward, and my constituents are some of the best transit riders in the region, the lowest cost per rider, the highest density neighborhoods, some of them in our entire state. And, you know, it is frustrating for my constituents to still see us building trains through parks and not through neighborhoods. That remains a concern of my constituents as well. But I don't think that holding this up is going to help solve that problem. I also am very concerned about the issues that have been raised about rail safety. I hear that from my constituents as well in the neighborhood meetings in the evenings. This is a real concern, and I really appreciate the work that Frank Hornstein has done, along with Councilmembers Reich and Palmisano and myself, to do as much as we can. Our hands are really tied a lot with the railroads. They have an enormous amount of power that was given over, you know, over a century ago. We are doing what we can to advocate for you, for my constituents, for all of us who are concerned about rail safety. I also just want to say, you know, this has been a long conversation, and Mayor Hodges, Chair Reich, Councilmember Goodman have advocated over and over and over for the city and for the people who live immediately nearby, but for all of us who wish that this was a better deal for the city of Minneapolis. So again, I'm still supporting this train. I think it's a part of our important part of our regional transit system, but this is a better project today because of all of the work that has happened in all of those meetings. Every time you came, every time my constituents got engaged, and again, I am very glad that we are bringing forward this rail safety resolution today.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Gordon, followed by Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, and I certainly had an opportunity to speak at length about this issue the last time we gave municipal consent, and actually I was hopeful that that would be the last time we would be asked to give municipal consent. So it's, although one of the issues I had at the time was that the project wasn't done and hadn't been fully completed, and we hadn't figured everything out and got all our ducks in a row, and apparently it was so much incomplete that now we're having to come back and figure more things out now. But I don't want to necessarily speak at length about a lot of things. One of my big concerns did have to do with the parks and the water. But just what I want to emphasize today is how this shows what a significant, deep and serious problem we have in our country with our lack of ability to regulate railroads and the trains. It's ridiculous that we are so powerless at the city level, at the county level, at the state level, and I suggest at the federal level. Somehow that we have given the railroads the ability to operate outside the democracy, and we need to fix that. I may not be voting for the municipal consent today, but I'm absolutely going to be voting for any staff direction and resolution that puts some pressure on the railroads. And I think we need to raise our expectations. I don't think there's any reason why we couldn't say we're swallowing the co-location, but absolutely we will not be swallowing any of this hazardous material and tell the railroads that they can't do it. Not that I'm going to vote to necessarily swallow the co-location, if you know what I'm saying, but thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Palmisano.
Mr. Chair, in regards to the SDEIS and many of the commentary that's been going on through all of these discussions and the significant issues around freight rail, I'd like to bring forward other rail safety measures. I know that we are working on a broader, what we call the freight safety resolution, that is a citywide plan in a way to try and get some kind of improvements done from rail safety across our region. But first, and in conjunction with this municipal approval today, we're also working on a resolution that is more specific to this area and some of the environmental issues around freight safety in this area. So I just wanted to mention that that is part of this, and it's an important part of this to me. Thanks.
Thank you. And just to reemphasize that, there will be a resolution, a companion resolution to the action before us that does address the items that were raised in both testimony by Representative Hornstein and the work between you and Councilmember Bember that have done to make specific comments and position the city to address these pretty grave concerns that we have. Also, you referenced something we're working on with staff to address these issues that are citywide. The concerns are not just specific to one area, but they proliferate throughout the city. The population numbers that are impacted that came through testimony today per this project, you could multiply that quite considerably if you look at the rail yard activity and the materials that are transported throughout the city. So we will come forward with a more comprehensive resolution to that effect as well. There are a lot of residents, a lot of concerns. I wish to yield the floor to Councilmember Goodman, who represents much of this area and is probably the senior participant as an elected official in this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't plan on speaking today. I don't serve on this committee. I was here to hear the comments, the very eloquent comments of my constituents. But I have to really, at this point, echo the comments of one person more than anybody else, and that's Sari Brenner, because I feel like what she said is really illustrative about how so many people feel. When Councilmember Gordon talks about the lack of democracy within railroads, let's talk about the lack of democracy at the Met Council. An unelected group of people appointed by a political appointee charged with building out the regional transit system in the region without much concern for the people who are most affected. Imagine being someone who lived in a home that you've purchased and your entire amount of equity is in it, and they're talking about building a tunnel 2 feet from your building. Imagine the level of uncertainty you would feel and the lack of trust you would have when you read an SDIS followed from a DIS that says there's not going to be any problem with that. You don't need to be an engineer to understand why people have some serious concerns. And I know the fix is in. I understand where the votes are. I'm very clear about the fact that there are a lack of people on this council willing to take on the Met Council. And I understand that. I understand its politics, but I'm not one of those people. I feel like I was elected to represent my constituents' point of view. And you mark my words, there's going to be a problem with this. There's no possibility they're going to be able to dig the way they're suggesting that they're going to dig to build a tunnel in this pinch point without affecting a massive number of people. You can see the example of it right now at the Trammell Crow construction project, where a building that is even further away, and some of the buildings are much further away, have experienced fairly significant damage from this exact same system that they're talking about using at this pinch point. So I don't want to be here saying I told you so. I'll probably be long retired by the time I have to tell people so, but I think that this is a serious enough issue that I wish more people would pay attention to it. I do appreciate the efforts on behalf of Representative Hornstein. I don't want to put him on the spot only to say you're going to have another shot at this because the legislature is going to make the final decision about whether or not this is something that should be funded. I think Mr. Carney is correct in that regard, and this fight is not over in that sense. I also want to note that to say that this project is coming in on budget is the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard. That's because the budget keeps going up. I am proud of the fact that Council Members Reich, Glidden, and the mayor's office negotiated a situation where we're not going to be losing any stations in Minneapolis. I do think that our professional staff and elected officials did an extremely good job of making sure that we made it through municipal consent without further damage. And we did take a lot of criticism in the media for not contributing financially to the project. I'll tell my constituents in no small way was that a victory for us. But in the end, I put myself in the shoes of Sari Brenner, who I think says it best when she says, who is looking out for us? I have lost faith in the system. Sari, I tell you, I've lost faith in the system a long time ago. It's partially why I ran for re-election unopposed, to be able to represent my constituents' point of view. And I put myself in your shoes every day. I'm in the blast zone. I don't live in this immediate neighborhood. And I feel like our system has failed my constituents. And that will be one of many, many regrets we have down the line. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that with regards to this matter, I mean, you know, I feel like I don't live in the blast zone, and so I feel like I don't know, or I don't feel as much as the folks who live in that area. And you know, I have grave concerns about all of the stuff that is happening with regards to this issue, especially, you know, when we talk about safety and security. And you know, I think Councilmember Goodman talks about it in the way of, you know, the fix is on. And, you know, I hate when that is the case, especially because, it seems like we're just wasting the time of people who live in the city of Minneapolis, that they show up to a public hearing, they say everything they feel, and they say everything they think, and, we kind of know where the votes are already, and that's unfortunate. With regards to this issue of, North Side versus all these other sides and all that stuff, I just want to say, I think folks on the North Side want what everybody else in this whole city want, which is good policy that helps them just like it helps anybody else in the city. I don't think it's, that necessarily everybody else in the city has to do charity work for the city, for the folks who live in the North Side. I think really if we do good policy, it works well for everybody in the city. And, with regards to just this issue, I'm not going to vote on this today. I'm just going to refrain from it. And, I'll just wait until Friday to see where the chips fall.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any further discussion from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting? No. Abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. So that moves forward for full council consideration, which is actually the determinant vote. Thank you very much for your time and testimony. And also in conjunction with that, we will be drafting a final set of language for the resolution that goes into the concerns regarding rail safety. Councilmember Bender?
Councilmember Reich, if I may, I'd like to move that resolution now, which everyone has in front of them,
Okay,
related to rail safety.
so that's been moved. Obviously, we can revise it as needed, but we do have an initial draft that we will forward to full council. Any further discussion?
Mr. Reich, or Chair, I'd like to just read the resolution.
Oh, certainly.
It says a resolution by Reich, Palmisano, and Bender conveying the city's concerns to the railroad companies and the Met Council regarding the rail freight safety in the Southwest Light Rail Corridor in the city of Minneapolis. Whereas the Minnesota legislature in 2015 updated the Minnesota laws, Chapter 312, which called on the state to analyze preparedness and impacts to public safety from transportation of ethanol by rail. And whereas the Minnesota legislature updated statutes 115E to include additional safety and spill response reporting for trains carrying oil and ethanol. And whereas 19,000 Minneapolis residents live in the evacuation zone of a possible oil, ethanol, and other hazardous high flammable materials train explosion in the Kenilworth corridor in downtown Minneapolis. And whereas the Federal Railroad Administration has found the risks of an explosion from the ethanol tankers to be similar to those of carrying crude oil. And whereas the utilization of unit trains carrying 80 or more ethanol or flammable tanker cars through the Kenilworth corridor in downtown Minneapolis is increasing. And whereas Twin City and Western Railroad has opposed public discourse of state-required spill prevention and cleanup plans, therefore be it resolved that the city of Minneapolis convey a letter request that the railroad companies traveling in the Kenilworth corridor and parts of downtown Minneapolis are co-located with light rail, publicly disclose emergency response and spill prevention plans, and begin a process with the city and local neighborhood organizations and citizen groups to address community concerns, and publicly disclose routing decision plans and present options for rerouting of oil, ethanol, and other high hazardous flammable trains from the Kenilworth corridor during the Southwest Light Rail construction, and report to the city the extent of its liability insurance for spills, fires, and explosions and items covered under that insurance. Be it further resolved that the city of Minneapolis convey a letter request to the Metropolitan Council to prepare a report to the Minneapolis City Council regarding rail safety measures undertaken in other communities in the United States where light rail transit is co-located with crude oil and ethanol trains. Ensure that the final environmental impact statement for the Southwest Light Rail project include discussion of emergency response planning for an ethanol train incident, and discuss measures the Metropolitan Council will take to ensure that railroads operating in the corridor respond to the above mentioned requests from the city of Minneapolis of the railroads. I move that motion.
Moved. Councilmember Gordon, followed by Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate this resolution. I was just, as I was reading it, and I noticed we want them to discuss emergency response planning for an ethanol train incident. I just wonder if we could think about that for a second and make sure we've covered everything, because by limiting to ethanol, where I noticed we were careful not to limit it earlier, so maybe if we could think of some language to just make sure, and other potentially hazardous, or think about that for a second. But while we're thinking about that, because I don't have any language actually crafted, I appreciate this. I actually wouldn't mind if it even went further and called on the railroads not to route any oil, ethanol, or other hazardous flammable materials. In fact, that might be the words we want to put in there, is oil and other high hazardous flammable materials. But I understand that maybe we don't want to necessarily do that, and it would be pointless too, because I know what we're up against. And by just asking for disclosure of information and understanding plans, that would be significant, because a lot of this operates hidden to us all, and we can't even figure out what they're doing and when they're doing it. And and they want to keep that information because it's their business and that's proprietary, and we can't let you know about that, which I think is ridiculous. So I think we need to keep doing resolutions like this, and this is an opportunity for us to do it here, and I'm very supportive of this, and I appreciate the work that's gone into this. And I want people here to know that this isn't just a problem where there's light rail and isn't just a problem in this part of the city, but this is a significant part of the city. In fact, I'm looking forward to when we see that map of who all is in the blast zones, and we can figure out exactly how few houses are actually safe in our city right now with all the hazardous materials that are being transported through here. And I really appreciated somebody who commented about how we get to regulate trucks where they can go with their hazardous materials and can't, and we can do that as a state and as a city. It absolutely doesn't even seem fair. So in this instance, maybe we should try to get those hazardous material transporters on trucks to be with us on this fight as we move forward. And lastly, I'll just thank Frank Hornstein for being here today and for leading this at the legislature, and look forward to seeing if we can't make more progress in other areas too.
Councilmember Palmisano.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say thank you for allowing us to bring this resolution today on the same day as municipal approval for this project. I want to thank Representative Hornstein for drafting this with us and playing such a large role here. There's much more to come, and I know that we're working toward early October to have a broader freight rail safety resolution, but this is specific to the Southwest Corridor. To me, this resolution is all about ethanol, oil, and other flammables, and that's really important. So I wanted to call that out, that this isn't just about oil. This is about all hazardous materials, and thank you for the time.
Thank you. Councilmember Yang, all the way Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to throw this out there. I read here about the resolution that TCNW has opposed public disclosure of state-required spill prevention and cleanup plans. And then here we have a letter that is going to ask them to publicly disclose emergency response and spill prevention plans. And I just think, those two things don't make sense. If the state is mandating that they do it and they don't do it, I don't see how a letter causes them to do it. But, I'm going to be supporting this anyway.
Thank you, Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Yang, I think we all agree that they should be doing a lot of things they're not doing. I just wanted to move an amended version to include Councilmember Gordon's comment that the language in the final resolving clause include, where light rail transit is, where we want to add ethanol and other hazardous materials. Let's see. There we go. Yes. Where light rail transit is co-located with trains.
That's right here. Planning for an ethanol. So planning for an oil, ethanol, and other hazardous material trains.
In the second bullet, that emergency response planning be for an ethanol, oil, or other hazardous material train incidents.
So that we have a resolution that has been amended. All those in favor of the resolution as recently amended, say aye. Dissenting nay. That carries. Thank you very much. We will now go quickly through some of the consent items and then go into our subsequent public hearing. On the consent agenda, starting with item 5, is sidewalk repair construction assessments. Item 6 is the snow ice removal from public sidewalk assessments, and set that public hearing for October 27th. Item 7 is the special service district 2016 assessment, set that public hearing for October 13th for the listed areas. Item 8 is the non-governmental tax exempt parcel streetlight operation fee assessments and designating those areas in a public hearing, which is October 27, 2015. Item 9 is the adopting report designating the citywide street maintenance assessments in a public hearing for October 27th. Item 10 is approving the application for a large block event on October 17, 2015 to operate outside the hours permitted by our code, and that's for the Zombie Pub Crawl block event. Item 11 is the Clean Water Action Fund Inflow Infiltration Grant Agreement, and that's an agreement with Metro Council for the purposes and amounts stated. And that will be referred to the Ways and Means Committee. Item 12 is the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization Grant Agreement, and an agreement with the watershed to accept a $100,000 grant for increased stormwater facility in conjunction with the listed project, and a resolution approving that appropriation, which will be referred to Ways and Means. Item 13 is authorizing the contract with ABM Incorporated for a contract with municipal parking system contract valued at $21,400,000 for a 3-year term beginning October 1st, 2015, with 2 possible 1-year renewals for the operation of that system. That will be referred to Ways and Means. Item 14 is the Washington Street Project Reconstruction Project, designation cost estimate and set public hearing. That public hearing will be set for October 27th. Details are listed. Item 15 is authorizing agreement to reimburse Ryan Companies for $50,000 for construction and the infrastructure according to the terms identified for Block 70 Downtown East Plan Unit Development. Item 16 is the bid for Snelling Avenue 24th Street Reconstruction Project, and that will be referred to Ways and Means. Item 17 is a bid for intelligent traffic signal enhancements, and that's with a single bid, and we did review the cost compatibility for Egan and Company for the amount listed. That will be referred to Ways and Means Committee. Item 18 is a bid for Pump Station 5 roof slab replacement. That's an expenditure for $146,000 to do that project. That will be referred to Ways and Means. And item 20 is a bid for Nicollet Mall Sanitary Sewer Replacement Project Phase 1, and accepting the low bid of Mingra Construction for the amount listed to deliver all the items and materials to continue that project. That also will be referred to the Ways and Means Committee. Those are consent items. Does anyone wish to pull any item? Seeing none, I move all items as stated. All in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. We'll now go to the public hearing. And the public hearing is now item 2, and that's the Downtown Business Improvement Special Service District 2016 assessments.